All right, EJ, we're 3 days into Shrine Bowl week so far. Seen a lot of practice, done more interviews than I can count at this point. All of those will be up relatively soon-ish. Whenever we can get them out. Obviously, there's a lot of tape study involved and diagrams and all that kind of stuff. You're going to love the interviews this year. But I'm exhausted. How are you feeling?
Not as exhausted as the previous 2 days, but that's a low bar. I'm thrilled. We came last year. We had a great time. We made a ton of good content. This year's class, and then we got surprised by last year's class in the draft.
Yeah.
Like, they had more draft picks that went higher than we'd expected. They made a greater impact to the league. Just saw it. Isaiah Pacheco playing for the Chiefs, taking that team to the Super Bowl.
Purdy.
Ton of other players.
Yep.
This class, honestly, even better. And
by far.
And that's thoroughly exciting. Our interviews are better. We're better at this. Maybe not managing the personal part, sleep, balance, that sort of thing. But in general, just so charged up to sit down and talk with the guys about ball. They're excited to be playing again. We're excited to be watching them, to be kicking off this process, to be bringing all the content to you. It's been a really good sort of energizing, impossible, wonderful time, and just psyched to be able to do it.
There's probably 8 to 12 guys that are going to go top 100 based on my rough estimates. I think at this point it's pretty safe to say Zay Flowers is going to be a first-round pick. So we got a first-rounder here and a whole bunch of second- and third-rounders as well. It was really hard to do this episode, very hard to do this episode, because we committed to doing 5 on offense and 5 on defense, and we still sort of missed that goal. It was really hard and to kind of narrow it down to, that few on each side of the ball, because there are so many good players here. But we got as close as we possibly could. We're going to start out on offense. We're kind of going like position by position. The number one guy that we felt stood out at each position, other than tight end, probably. We just kind of skipped tight end to be nice to that position.
Honestly, we took the tight end spot and turned it into offensive line. And
I was going to put one, by the way, honorable mention, Coletto, which is like sort of a tight end, fullback, linebacker-ish.
Now, see, I would have a different opinion. I would go Blake Whiteheart. So that's how much talent is here. And something important to note, if somebody didn't make this list, doesn't mean they didn't have a good week. When Brett says it was incredibly hard to create this, we were like, 5 offense, 5 defense, that'll cover it. And each position we were like, but this guy or this guy, how can you leave this guy out? That's how much talent is on the field, and it showed up in every practice.
Especially at edge, receiver, and DB, which are probably the strongest position groups here. It was insanely difficult. So we're going to start out on offense, of course, starting with quarterback, the sexy position that everybody listens for. DTR, I think for both of us was, the one that stood out the most, because you can really see the talent. Aiden O'Connell had some nice moments in practice. We had a great interview with him, by the way. We were talking to DTR tomorrow. But in terms of like physical tools, right? NFL quality physical tools, DTR is the guy here for that.
Absolutely. And so DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, for those of you not familiar, UCLA quarterback here at the Shrine Bowl, but also back home, which is a super cool story. Bishop Gorman in high school, local Las Vegas kid, gets to come home, play in front of his family. All that aside, on the field, cool, composed, has a ton of starts, understands, isn't shaken, and presents a very modern skill set. Obviously a very good thrower of the football, but when things break down, we had his guard here today talking about, man, it's just so fun when things break down, watching DTR just tear people apart for things you can't scheme. So he's got those run skills as well. In watching his tape, that's what was refreshed for me was, man, when he takes off, he actually has tools. He can hurt you.
He's not a year one player by any means. He needs work, obviously. But also, we saw him in practice a while ago, and he's miles ahead of where he was 18 months ago, right? So who's to say he can't take even more steps? We always say that progression is not linear. Well, for him, it kind of has been. So I'm excited to see where he goes in the future. I think he's a fun little kind of day 3 project for, the Andy Reids of the world, somebody wants to develop somebody with tools that maybe you could ship off as a trade piece later. The Eagles are notorious for doing that. Hell, as a Jalen Hurts backup, you could do a lot worse than him.
That's the thing, is I think anybody that has a mobile quarterback that really incorporates running from the quarterback position as part of their offensive game plan on a regular basis is going to look at Dorian Thompson-Robinson as a backup and say, hey, if our starter goes out, we don't go from 100% of our offense to 50. We go from 100% of our offense to maybe 85. And that's a very attractive prospect as an offensive coordinator to say, we don't lose everything when our running quarterback starter goes out. We can bring in DTR and do 75 or 80% of that right off the bat.
I think he could be, and this is a weird comparison because he's technically hasn't been a starter before, but like the new Tyler Huntley, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, Huntley started games, but he hasn't been like the guy. Sure. But also you and I have seen in the past, like, if he had the proper support and a better offensive coordinator, like maybe he could be, right? DTR, I think, has that similar kind of skill set.
Yep.
To the running back position, Fresno State has a million dudes at this game, and they're all really, really good. Receivers, running back. They have a quarterback's over at Mobile right now. Interesting that all the skill position guys came here and the quarterback went over there. But Mims from Fresno State really has stood out above all the other running backs here so far this week, at least.
I completely agree. Jordan Mims has been the best running back in 3 phases. And when I talk about 3 phases, obviously running back, running the ball. That's the first thing that everybody looks at. Are they elusive? Can they cut? Do they run with power? How's their pad level? Do they make the right decisions? How's their instinct? That's the number one. But running back in the NFL is 3 phases. You have to catch the ball now, and you have to pass protect. We all know, especially as a rookie, you're not going to get any playing time if you're going to get your quarterback killed. Mims has been the most complete back here in all 3 phases, and arguably has had the top sort of grades in the running category as well. Finished the year incredibly strong, touchdown in the last 9 games. Mm-hmm. His bowl game against Wazoo, over 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, 11.9 per. Just a great way to finish out his college career, finish strong, and he's just continuing that momentum here in Las Vegas.
Was he the one, I think it was a Tennessee linebacker, was he the one where they were kind of going back and forth in the pass pro drills, kind of calling each other out, redoing reps over and over again? I think that was him.
It was. He's got that competitive spirit. Most of the running backs here do. He's never say die. He is not going to give up if he loses a rep. Coaches have certainly noticed that. Scouts have certainly noticed that. But overall, in terms of that ready to go day one, he's not going to get a quarterback killed. Yes, he can catch a flare pass on 3rd and short. And, if we run him, inside, outside, good size, good pad level, good burst, especially in a straight line. Jordan Mims is the guy that stood out at running back here.
I think I got video of it because, it was one of those where like the linebacker would win a rep and he would get up and be like, no, come back. We're doing that again. And then he would win. And then the next go around, they got each other again. And then it went the other way. And the linebacker was like, no, get your ass back here. We're doing that again. Yep. It was really, really competitive environment. Coldest day today. It was like 40 degrees in practice, but it was still a really, really good, competitive, team-oriented. Like everybody's there to get each other better, right?
Yep.
And I think that Mims has really stood out, both as a player and as a teammate. I think we're interviewing him tomorrow, right?
He is on our list for tomorrow, and I am excited.
Getting to receiver. Speaking of good interviews, holy shit.
An impossible task.
This was, honorable mentions, Nico Remigio, also from Fresno State, fellow Mater Dei Monarch. What's up? Great interview. We didn't get to talk to his teammate yet. We talked to A.T. Perry. We talked to Demario Douglas. There's so many guys to pick from. But we have to start at the very, very top, and that's Zay Flowers. He didn't practice the first day. We don't entirely know why, but the story he did tell to somebody else who's doing media here. Again, we're interviewing Zay tomorrow. But the story that we heard was that somebody's pads didn't arrive in time, so Zay gave his pads to somebody else to practice on the first day so they could get more exposure, because obviously Zay knows that he's the dude, right? And that him practicing day one wouldn't really matter that much. But he came out in day 2. And it took one rep in the first drill to realize that he's different. And I think it went from, okay, he's probably a second-round pick to, okay, he's probably not getting anywhere near the second round.
I don't think he gets out of the first round at this point. His separation, explosion, vertical burst, hands, routes.
Everything.
It's just everything. And you see a guy on a field compared to, honestly, when you're talking about 10,000 college football players, you're talking about the top couple of senior all-star games or college all-star games. You know, there's 125-ish guys in each game, right? So you're talking about 250 players out of 10,000. These are all elite athletes, right? Zay Flowers comes out on day 2, takes about 3 routes, and you go, yep, that's a dude. He's different. He is at a level that is at this or above, and that sort of borderline, well, he's not the tallest, but it went out the window with he can separate, he can catch the ball, he's as advertised, he brings return value as well. It's going to be difficult to squeeze him out of those first 31 picks.
I was sitting in front of a GM on the field, you know, taking my pictures, doing my thing, keeping my ears open, of course. I won't say who, but in the one-on-ones after his first rep, the only comments out of that GM's mouth were, that's different. And I think that when you have GMs saying that about you among a bunch of other guys that are going to be in the NFL, you're going first round. The only question is where in the first round. I don't think it was an accident that he's on the Patriots squad. Nope. I think that they are heavily looking into what he can do, and I'm kind of putting him in pencil in New England right now.
You don't even have to say, I kind of think. Like, the Patriots are here in force. Obviously, their entire coaching staff is here. The Patriots media is here in force. I think more Patriots outlets are here than any other team outlet. Patriots social is here. The amount of focus and concentration and sort of gimme for Zay is...
They're printing the jerseys already,
man. Unmatched. That's a very good pencil in for all your mock drafts if they happen. Zay is interesting. Can't wait to talk to him tomorrow. He is a special player, and it's been fun to watch him compete.
Now, we mentioned another interview we did with another wide receiver. We had to kind of swap out the tight end position for another wideout because we just couldn't. And that's A.T. Perry from Wake. We were intrigued by the measurables coming in. He was listed at 6'5" by Wake Forest, measuring in at 6'3", which is still obviously plenty tall. 195, so he's thicker than you think. I'd still want him to add probably 5 to 7 more pounds, get over that 200 mark, but... The thing is, for a big receiver, and he is a big receiver, he's incredibly fluid, agile, just as smooth a mover as you could ask for. And when we interviewed him, and that interview will be up on this channel sometime soon, one of the best interviews we've ever done for any position, let alone wide receiver. Incredibly cerebral player, how he approaches preparation, all the subtleties of being a receiver. Route running ability, catch radius, everything. I mean, he talks like a 10-year vet, and he's 6'3" with good, not great, but good speed. I think he's going to be a real pro's pro and probably an early contributor wherever he goes because he already conducts himself like a professional receiver. I thought he was a joy to talk to, and I kind of feel like he's a lock for top 100 at this point.
Top tier receiver, right? Top tier size, top tier tools. People will point to the speed. Yes, he's going to run probably in the mid 4.5s, maybe even the low 4.6s. It doesn't really matter, right? Because of his preparation, his intent, his nature in terms of every little detail, from his own physical preparation to his mental preparation to studying opponents, tendencies, looking at leverage, foot placement on the DB. There are very few wide receivers in the NFL that have that level of locked in, dialed in. I'm going to take every advantage. I'm going to think about all this. I'm going to modify my approach based on what I see in a sort of dynamic sense. great hands. One of the things I love about him on tape. Catches the ball away from his frame, doesn't matter where it is. Talk to us at length. Talk to us for like 5 minutes about his catching drills, right? Mm-hmm. I did this with jugs. I did this over the shoulder last summer because I wanted to get better at the sort of over the shoulder ball so I didn't have to turn. I know I could jump up and catch it, but I don't want that. I want to continue my momentum. Like, just a fascinating receiver to talk to. Liked him before we talked to him. Loved him after we talked to him.
I know he's going to be somewhere around 4.55. I don't think he's going to hit 4.6. I think he will be about 4.55. And all I'm telling myself is DeAndre Hopkins ran 4.57, and it was a very similar play style, right? It's about nuance, body control, ball skills, being a really good route runner. That is generally what wins in the NFL. I remember Daniel Jeremiah. This was years ago, but DJ put out. He looked at like the top 10 to 15 receivers average by production. And it's like, what's their average 40? And their average 40 was 4.54. Mm-hmm. So it's like you don't necessarily need great speed to be like an electric playmaker. What you need is to be a good route runner that can catch the fucking ball. And he can do that.
And he has every other tool, right?
Yeah.
He's got height and he plays big. He uses his hands, catches the ball away from his frame, which again extends that catch radius. Excellent route runner, technician, mental student, film studier. Like every possible advantage. He already has it. And as a guy coming out of college, we can't tell you how rare that is.
We've talked to a lot of college receivers. Very few have approached the game at his age like he does.
No, the only one I would have to say is another guy in this All-Star game, Nico Remigio.
He's the same kind of guy.
Wasn't on the field, but will start at return specialist, guy out of Fresno State, and will very quickly ascend to a wide receiver 3 in the NFL because he has the very similar cerebral approach, adds in the physical, electric playmaker. Like, those are the guys that are going to come in, make a difference, stick, go to multiple rosters if they have to. Just really, really talented receivers. Super impressive guys to talk to.
Apparently, he was the fastest receiver here to get to 32 interview requests, which multiple other guys did as well. But like he would literally day one, every NFL team wanted to talk to Nico Remigio. Partly because he's a really good receiver, and partly because he's an amazing return man. So I don't know where he's going to go because
it'll be a little bit lower based on size and production.
But the role, though, is pretty valuable, so that kind of balances out, too.
100% agree that he will get his shot in the NFL because of his return ability, which is electric. But some NFL team is just going to get that bonus of having a number 3 slot receiver. That's incredibly tough to cover. But also, again, his approach, right? Started at Cal, ended up at Fresno. People say, oh, why did his receiving production drop off as a senior? Well,
they had Jalen Cropper, too. So.
Yeah, they had Jalen Cropper. Jay Kaner was his quarterback. But, again, coach left and went to Washington. There's a lot of things there. But those two guys, Nico and AT, fascinating interviews, bring an incredible depth coming out of college to the receiver position. Loved it. Loved them both.
Now, finally, we had to get to offensive line, and this one was also pretty tough because we talked to multiple centers, and we love talking to centers because we can talk about protections and everything like that. But we settled on 2 guards that we wanted to highlight. Again, we tried to get to 5, but we're at 6. Sorry. First one being Chandler Zavala from NC State. He was the other half of that dynamic, destructive duo with Ike Ekwonu last year. Still left guard this year. Amazing mover at his size. I was watching tape and I was putting together like cut-ups of all their outside zone runs. His ability at his size, and he's pushing over 320 if I recall correctly.
Easily.
In his measurement. Like his ability to reach a shade is rare. Oh. It's incredibly rare. Just an amazing run blocker in his own system, but also he has the size and the power that I think if you want him to wash people down on a gap run, he could do that too. Oh, and by the way, he can pass protect. I think he's been the best O-line here. At any position group between tackle, center, guard, I think he's been the best one. And also a really, really good interview. We talked to him too. Very smart player, cerebral player, tough player. Like his attitude kind of came through a little. Like he does not suffer fools, which is what we love in an offensive lineman, right?
Nope.
I think Chandler Zavala is going to be one of these dudes. I don't know where he's going to go, but typically the guard sweet spot historically is like somewhere in the middle rounds, like 3rd to 5th. He's going to go somewhere in there and probably start sooner rather than later.
It's going to be 3rd. I'm telling you.
Wouldn't doubt it.
On the way into this game, I reached out to multiple sources I know that also scout in various capacities, media teams, any other number of folks. And multiple folks said, keep your eyes on Chandler Zavala. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. And I'd sort of asked, hey, who's that middle round player that's probably going to get picked later than they should, start sooner, and stay in the league 6 or 7 years, just kicking ass? Multiple people said Chandler's your guy. After watching this week of practice,
I believe it.
It's that 3rd round. Like, you're right.
Yeah.
3rd to 5th is the round for guards. It's 3rd for him. He's got power, sand in the pants. He's played all 5 positions. In our interview, you could tell when we asked, like, who's the guy that gave you the most trouble? I wouldn't say gave you the most trouble, but like, this guy taught me some things.
Nobody ever likes to admit somebody gave them trouble. That's what I find
Not
funny
that guy,
about it.
especially. Next day at practice, he ends up playing right guard because we asked, hey, have you always been a guard? Have you always played on one side? What's it like to switch sides? We asked him all those questions. Next day at practice, sure enough, he gets swapped to right guard. I see him after practice. I'm like, hey, Chandler. He's like, first time I've played right guard in like 4 years. I was like, you wouldn't know it. He's like, I told you. And I'm like, yes, you did. Honestly, he said, it's not that big of a deal. I can go this way. I can go that way. I've played that way. I've played outside. He has power. He has speed. He's good pass blocking. He's massive in run blocking. This is a guy you want on your team.
Yeah, I don't entirely know how high he's going to go, but it's higher than people maybe watching this were expecting.
100%.
And that's kind of been the general theme of Shrine Bowl is we got here and we're like, okay, let's check this guy, check this guy, check this guy. And we're like, oh, shit.
How do you fit them all in?
This is kind of from a macro perspective, before we get to Antonio Mafi, from a macro perspective, you know, I feel for a long time it's been like, okay, Senior Bowl's like Senior Bowl and then Shrine Bowl's like the next tier below. It's not that way this year. Like the gap is, I struggle to call it a gap, truly. Like it's the same level of talent. It really is.
It's really close this year, and we came in and certainly name recognition slightly lower for the Shrine Bowl, but on-field production, having stood out there for now 3 or 4 days, watching them compete against, again, some of the top 250 players out of 10,000 in the country, it's difficult to look at them and go, oh, they're worse.
Yeah. It's the closest I've ever seen these two events. And obviously there are some position groups that I think are better here. There's some position groups that I think are better in Mobile.
100%.
But the fact that it's a pretty even split, credit to Eric. Like, he's recruited his ass off this year.
No, all credit to Eric Galco, Shane Coughlin, the director of scouting. They've done an incredible job bringing talent here to Las Vegas to compete. And it's not just us. You might think, oh, well, you get access to the Shrine Bowl, so it's a bias. Sure, we get tremendous access at this event.
But we're not the only, every media, that's the thing, is like it's everybody gets these interviews.
Every
it's not
media,
just us.
and it's not just media. Like, I talked to a couple of agents yesterday, and agents said the same thing. Shrinking. It's not really noticeable anymore as to which game folks go to when you go out and you watch players like you do on this list. That's top competition, period.
Yeah. Today's episode is brought to you by ButcherBox. You could take the guesswork out of buying high-quality meat and have it delivered right to your door from ButcherBox as often as you want it. All of their beef is 100% grass-fed. They have free-range chicken, wild-caught seafood, and pork-raised crate-free. You can get a variety of box plan options from curated to customized, so you can get the exact type of cuts you want. And for me personally, I got an all beef box myself, and just from that box alone, I got a really nice strip loin that I seared up with some pancetta Brussels sprouts. I got a flat iron steak that I made some chimichurri with on the side, because I love chimichurri. I also got some ground beef that I use to make dirty rice as kind of like a quick meal prep option for lunches throughout the week. And I also whipped up some Cajun rubbed sirloin tips with potatoes on the side for me and my wife for yet another dinner. And on top of all that, I still have another pork tenderloin, another chuck roast, and 2 more top sirloins to work with in the freezer for whenever I get back from Shrine Bowl next week. So it's quite a lot of food, if we're being honest. If you're a meat lover like me and EJ, but you don't want to have to deal with going to the butcher shop to get high quality cuts to work with, and you just want it delivered easily and quickly, check out what ButcherBox has to offer. ButcherBox has a special offer running for our listeners where you can use my code BOOTLEG to get $20 off your first box. Sign up at butcherbox.com/bootleg and use code BOOTLEG to get $20 off. Thank you again to ButcherBox for sponsoring today's video. And with that, let's get back to it. All right, getting to our last offensive player, Antonio Mafi. Our friend Coach Vass was ironically his nose tackle in high school / defensive end, if you can believe he was a defensive end at one point. And then, switched over during his college career to guard because he was a good nose tackle, but an NFL guard is how it was described to me.
Yeah.
Really, really talented kid.
Yeah.
And you want to talk about anchor. The quads on this dude. He could squat a house, I swear to God.
Bet he has.
And you watch him in the one-on-ones, like, if somebody... people tried bowls on him for, like, the first day and then figured out, okay, can't run through him.
No.
Try to run around him, get his hands in the chest. Can't do that either. By day 3, today, he still wasn't losing reps, but, like, I don't know what else you throw on him. Like, he's really smooth for his size. Like, obviously, he's not like the greatest mover, but most guards aren't. Most guards are playing guard for a reason and not tackle. But for what you want from a guard, which is, at least be balanced, have power so that when you get your hands on somebody, they're not going anywhere, and be able to at least move in that kind of 6-yard box, right? So that you don't lose the edge against like a 4-eye or something like that. He can do that. I don't think he's like an Elton Jenkins that can like kick out to tackle and be fine. Most guys aren't. But I think he's a starting guard in the NFL. I really do. He's got immense power, like truly immense power. And as a run blocker, that's where the short area quickness, I think, shows up. Even better than when he's in a pass protector. When he's going forward, he's quicker than when he's going backwards, which is interesting. But like you see some of the tape when they're running like wide zone, and he's like getting out in space, tracking down linebackers. You're like, okay, he can move. Not like the same as, again, say like a first round guard, but he's also another one of these guys that's going to go 3rd to 5th round and end up starting games and be pretty damn solid for a 3rd to 5th round player. Like, there's a lot of them this year, and he's one of them.
He's going to end up going in that range, but he's also going to end up starting for a long time.
I think so too.
Yeah, short area power. Watching him in combo blocks, it almost feels like unfair.
Yeah,
like
because the movement he generates.
Why'd you do that? Like, you could have done that with 1, but with 2, that's just mean. We asked him, would you rather stay? Would you rather pin, or would you rather be the puller? Puller. I want motion. I want a head start on that linebacker. Great teammate. Great observer of the game in terms of adjustment, all the sort of nuanced calls that have to happen on offensive line, not above him at all. Just makes him that much better, adding that thought in and understanding role, what everybody else is doing on the offensive line, then being able to execute with power. Great player. Another player we had a heads up on coming in here, like, watch Mafi at guard. Like, he's a born guard. He's going to get drafted at guard. He's going to excel at guard. Yes, and yes.
Pretty much the only thing he has to work on, which isn't a lot. The only thing he has to work on, like when you look at all of his pressures given up, it's like late ad rushers on a pressure package, or like a late looper coming on a 3-man game or something like that. And he'll be like a hair late to get there. But that's a pretty easy fix, like
that's coachable.
That's
folks.
coachable. Like, that's just about like, getting better with in terms of scanning with your eyes.
And he's a coachable guy,
he
right?
Really is. He
His
really is.
attitude is so offensive line, right? To put a pin in it is, he is of a piece. We are as good as our 5. Our communication is key. It's a we, not me. Like, just the kind of guard you really want on your football team.
If you miss out on Zavala, he's like the mid-round guard I'm targeting.
100%.
Probably. All right, flipping it to defense. This one was probably even harder than offense just because the edge class here is nuts and the DB class ain't far behind. We left out linebacker not because, we don't necessarily like all the linebackers. We left out linebacker because we just couldn't not fit in two corners, but we'll get to them in a little bit. We're going to start off with defensive tackle. Your Ohio State guy that you fell in love with, 5 minutes into being here.
Yeah, Jerron Cage has shown an immense amount of impact here. It doesn't really matter who you line him up on or what technique he has to use. He's shown every ability. He's shown long arm and the ability to stand people up and push them in run protection, keep the other arm open for the gap. He's shown the ability to sort of dip and rip and get by people really quickly. He's shown just pure aggression in any kind of disruption in the backfield, and we all know interior pressure is one of the pressures that quarterbacks really hate.
More of a penetrator than a tree stump, I would say.
Yeah, he's not the guy that's going to stand up, but he can stand up a half for sure. And by the way, he might be in the backfield 3 yards saying hello, and does that fairly often. Honorable mention, Kobie Turner.
That's who I was gonna pick. If we're gonna get to 6 to match offense, my interior guy is Kobie Turner.
Our honorable mention has to be Kobie Turner as a pure penetrating 3. I don't think there's a better player here. Incredibly cerebral, but also wildly physically capable. Won most of his reps this week. Both of those guys as interior defensive linemen are gonna go very high.
And we talked to Kobie. We did a lengthy interview with him first day we were here. And he's one of the smartest players here at any position. Really, really cerebral. And that's kind of the theme that I think we've learned from our time interviewing defensive linemen is they're kind of one of the smartest groups on the field if we're talking about all the different stuff they have to read.
They have to counter offensive linemen, and offensive linemen are typically some of the smartest guys in the room. They have multiple adjustments. They have to, again, work together. They have to anticipate what's coming at them. And defensive linemen, rightfully so, are going, well, if I'm going to chess match those guys and beat them, I've got to do that at their own game. And that means that they have to come up and say, well, if they're going to do this, we're going to do this. And it's that constant sort of push and pull. And Kobie's a great example of that.
Super interesting guy. Spent time at Richmond. Was wearing his Richmond Spiders helmet at practice.
Yes, he was.
Came out of Wake. He transferred to Wake. Got his master's in music there. Composes his own music. Just a whip smart dude with tons of physical talent. If you guys liked the Thomas Booker interview last year, he ended up going to the Texans, I think, in the 5th round. Kobie is just as good of an interview, and I think he might actually go even higher, to be honest, from a physical talent. And Thomas was super talented,
for sure.
He tested.
Yeah, his combine
well.
was top 5 of all interior defensive linemen. I don't know if Kobie's going to test that well, but in terms of who you're getting as a player, hard to look away from Turner and Jerron.
He had more splash plays on tape, at least.
And Jerron Cage, I think, just one of those guys, high-profile school, a bit underrated.
Which is weird for an Ohio State defensive lineman because they're kind of like a D-line factory. I mean, Coach Larry Johnson's the Ohio State D-line coach, and he's a legend, absolute legend. One of the greatest defensive line coaches to ever live, especially when it comes to the pass rush department. People always say, the Bosa swipe move.
For sure.
That's Larry Johnson.
Yep.
He teaches that to every single Ohio State defensive lineman. Chase Young does it. Who's the kid in Denver? Draymond Jones.
Yep.
He does it too. That's the Ohio State swipe move to me. It's the Larry Johnson swipe move.
It's the Larry Johnson swipe move.
But he learned from the master. He's a really, really good player. There were actually 2 Ohio State interior defensive linemen. Teron Vincent, just as a throwaway mention, son of Troy Vincent.
Absolutely.
Was here in-house. Former 5-star, by the way. So, yeah, we have it's been kind of interesting seeing everything from Ohio State to Ferris State on the same field, but very interesting mix, and they've all been really good. All right, getting to edge, even deeper than the interior group here. Might be the deepest group out of any position group. This one we had a pretty furious debate because, again, honorable mentions, Caleb Murphy from Ferris State's been great.
Murphy has been unreal this week.
Jose Ramirez, one of my favorites, led the nation in sacks. I think he was Defensive Player of the Year, Conference Defensive Player of the Year for him at Eastern
Interview
Michigan.
with him coming on the channel as well.
Very good interview. Super versatile pass rusher that wins with every single move. BJ Thompson is not a refined player whatsoever, but holy shit, he's an athlete. 6'5", 240, 40-inch vert, 11.3 in the broad, runs 4.4. Great interview, by the way. Great kid. Raw, obviously, but is super coachable and has unbelievable tools. And if you give him to Chris Kasurik with the 49ers, he will turn him into a super weapon. He is unbelievably gifted. And, every time in drills, you can see the gifts. He's going to go top 100
BJ
as well.
Thompson against skill players is the ultimate mismatch. So
my God,
they have edges going against tight ends and running backs. He whooped them relentlessly.
Yes.
He struggled more against the offensive linemen, but against skill players, BJ Thompson is not fair.
Shot.
Vegas wouldn't issue odds on that.
Yeah, he's really fun. He'll go top 100 just on tools alone and the fact that he's a really good kid. Again, not sure where in the top 100, but somewhere in there, I think. But in terms of the edge class that won out above all those guys, Yasir Abdullah, the 6'1" nightmare from Louisville, hybrid off-ball linebacker / edge. Did another interview with him. He's really, really fun to talk to. He's won probably 90% of his reps, both at off-ball and edge so far this week. Nobody's been able to block him at all. He's flashed some coverage skills, especially on tape. Had a crazy, ridiculous interception, I think against Pitt, right?
Versus Pitt, correct.
Where he literally carried the Z receiver off motion down the boundary and then armbarred him and then intercepted the ball as an off-ball linebacker. Oh, and by the way, he had 55, 60 pressures this year.
Yasir Abdullah is that guy that is incredibly dangerous going forward, not only in sacks, but he's a TFL magnet, had a ton of TFLs in college. And you see him do things that other edges do, but just that much better, right? Mm-hmm. Chasing down, backside 3-cut, but normally that's just a chase and run him into the pressure. No, he makes the tackle, right? He catches him catches the running back from the backside. Let that sink in for a second. And then, oh no, I'm going to carry a receiver down the boundary 25 yards, arm bar him, turn around, blot out the sun, and make the pick because you'll see the interview, but he's just oh, it's time to play defensive back. That's an edge saying it's time to play defensive back. And his own defensive back on his team, Kei'Trel Clark, who we interviewed today, saying, nah, that's my dog. I went up to him after that saying, that's the way you do it. This is the sort of hybrid talent level you're getting out of Yasir, and tremendous interview. You'll see his skills on tape when you look at him. Just flashes everywhere, forward, backward, sideways. He's there making plays, making impact. It's not an accident. He's going to go higher than people think.
I got a video. I don't know if you saw it when he threw the coach to the ground because he forgot to stop on the drill and he literally just finished the sack and whipped him to the ground. I got a video of it. I'll throw it up.
I saw you giggling about that. We all giggled about that. There were not that many people at practice today, but he ended up interacting with the coach that was holding the ball, simulating the quarterback, and he forgot to pull up and whip the coach to the ground. Whatever. Hard to unteach.
A little bit more than a love tap, but yeah, it's. I would rather, what's the thing? I'd rather coach it out of him than coach him into it.
Well, forgiveness, not permission.
Yeah. All right, getting to corner. We chose 2 because, again, really, really hard to pick here.
Honestly, we could have had 4.
We could have had 4, and we talked to the La Tech kid, Murphy, who's, big, lengthy, long, outside corner.
Really hard not to include him here. You'll see the interview with him. Has had a tremendous week. Do not think his exclusion from this list means he didn't do well. He did exceptionally well, and we just had to pick the cream of the cream.
And the first one being Kei'Trel Clark, also from Louisville, back-to-back Louisville players. He's probably going to be the highest drafted DB here. Some people would say Hodges Tomlinson, but Hodges Tomlinson measured in like 5'7", 175, so I don't know about that. But Kei'Trel Clark, in terms of like guys who could play a similar role to Hodges Tomlinson, but more like he had a pick today when he was in press coverage, and it looked like so natural to him, even though he profiles more as a nickel. He can play outside if you really want him to. He's a nightmare on screens. Like, he's so good at coming downhill. Like, he's got really good footwork and off coverage. We talked to him about that today in terms of like, he's one of those guys who doesn't really need a T-step to stop and restart. Like, he can just bicycle pedal and go. Really, really versatile player. Again, another top 100 pick here. I think different teams will see him differently depending on if they see him as an outside guy, inside guy, maybe safety because he can tackle. Just a fascinating evaluation.
Yeah, he can play nickel. He can play outside. Any team that's going to a 3 safety package, which is everybody these days in dime, you got a guy that can trigger forward, explode any sort of jet sweep, swing pass, whatever. That's his bread and butter. Incredibly cerebral as a corner. We talked to him about why did you trigger? Why did you blow up this particular play? Showed him the play, and he's like, look, there's 2 big guys outside that aren't normally outside. The receiver is half a step deeper than the receivers normally are. I see that. I know it's coming to my side. I tell my safety behind me, Phil, I'm going. That level of thought, tape study, and then the physical explosion to split those blockers and blow that guy up for TFL. You see it all the time on his tape. Tons of impact. Really, really good player. A player that has ascended this season. Some of the preseason grades on him were in the sort of 200, 250 range for draft pick. If you don't have him right now in the top 100, I'm not sure what you're doing based on his tape. He ascended that far. He's continued that momentum here at the Shrine. Great interview, great player. Training down at Exos in Pensacola.
Seems like everybody is now.
Well, they have a great class there. Caleb Murphy's there as well. But this is a guy that's going to be able to contribute to your football team with as many multiple DB packages as current NFL teams play immediately.
There was another corner that popped for us. More of an inside guy than an outside guy. I think that's pretty defined, right? He's going to be a nickel, especially based on size. And that's Starling Thomas V. Very rare you see a 5th on
It's
there.
true, very rare you see a 5th.
Starling Thomas V from UAB. So we're going from Louisville to UAB. You would not tell that he's a UAB kid from how he took on all comers. Like even Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers is going to be a top 20-ish pick probably. And he specifically was like, I want you. And he held up. He really did. Like he held up. Like he's a just incredibly tough kid, built like a brick shit house. Like for a nickel corner, like he's thick, right? Yep. But moves way better than you would expect for somebody who's built like him, like the stocky, shorter guy. But he's thick enough to make me think that he could hold up against the run pretty well, which as a nickel is pretty important, right? A lot of nickels have to be able to tackle and fit the run. He can do that. But also, if you give him a 2-way go in man coverage, he's quick enough to hold up there too. So I'm a big fan of Starling Thomas. Probably a day 3 guy as a nickel, just because of the nature of the position. But he's gonna start somewhere because nickels are really important, and finding a good one is really hard to do.
Yeah, he's a great interview. This is a good kid in terms of football intelligence, in terms of that want to, which is incredibly important at the nickel position. Got to be able to go forward, tackle, be tough. He showed that in spades this week. Like, he's taken on everybody, no quarter.
Doing like 4 reps in a row.
Right.
Yeah.
Gimme. No, I'm not leaving. Like, next guy up. every time he lost a rep, he lost a few reps today in the rain. He was frustrated.
One of them, we were up there. I think we had a better angle than the ref. The ref called it complete for a touchdown. It was a
but
PBU. It was a PBU.
He was angry every time. No, man, no, that's not right. He wants to win every rep. He wants to be better. He wants to understand it's not that he believes he deserves it. Like, he is willing to work for every bit of it. Very humble kid. Alabama beginnings, believes that doesn't matter where you play, your talent will show through, and he has showed that this week. He has backed down from nobody, and he has made way more plays than he's missed. Super tough kid, extremely excited about his prospects in the league.
In terms of money made, he's among the top.
He's
guys,
up there.
Right?
We were not expecting to be like, oh, we're talking to you about Starling Thomas. We are absolutely talking to you about Starling Thomas. He is a player.
Rounding it out here with safety, AJ Finley from Ole Miss. Very interesting profile, right, in terms of physical profile.
Yeah.
6'2", as a safety, who can move like that. Got 3 picks in practice yesterday, doing a variety of different things. Like,
that was
as a curl dropper over the top.
That was
everything.
the thing. Mm-hmm. He popped off yesterday. So there was some attention being paid to him, certainly because of his size profile, where he played, SEC profile. He's played against everybody because that's where all the playmakers that you love in the NFL have come from. He's played against all of them, basically. And then yesterday pops off with 3 picks, right? Undercutting one, grabbing a tip from a teammate on another one, ends up with a 3rd pick for the day. Ridiculous in an all-star game setting to come up with 3 picks in a day. Shows speed, physicality, obviously has the size. Talked to him today in an interview. Is a cerebral player. Came from Mobile, Alabama as a high school player. Has played against who's who, you name them. Mm-hmm. Chase, Jefferson, like Judy,
Devontae, really the entire Alabama receiving core. I'm pretty sure Treylon Burks at some point, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's in the SEC. Just a fascinating player, and then has that sort of pop-off day. 3 picks in a day, tons of concentration. Go back and take a look at AJ's tape. Like, he is a fluid mover at 6'2",
which is not common.
Not common at his size to have the amount of fluidity he has. Asked him about going forward and tackling versus playing the sort of single high safety, which was the sort of predominant meta at Ole Miss. He said, either, like, cool going in pass coverage, but I'm really happy to be able to, at the line, and press people, hit people. Just a super versatile DB, which is sort of carte blanche in the NFL, right? Write your own check.
I was trying to think of, like, okay, what would his role be? Because, he's not going to be one of the top safeties drafted because in terms of, like, burst and speed and everything like that, like, he's not there. At least on tape. I don't know what he's going to test, but at least on tape, because I was going through it and I was like, okay, he's good mover, not great mover, right?
Sure.
So I was trying to think, I'm like, okay, with his size and tenacity and intelligence, like, what's he going to do? I was thinking Jerron Curse. Somebody who, again, similar. Well, Jerron's bigger even. Jerron's fucking massive. But in terms of that kind of role, right? Like the bigger safety where it's like your job is to go stop tight ends. And when we're in our 3 safety packages, we need to be able to put, like, if we need to rotate you deep to play the post for a few snaps, we need to know you're not going to shit your pants. He's obviously not going to shit his pants, right? He's got good ball skills. So I think that kind of like Jerron Curse-ish type role as the other guy, the specialist, right? Plus special teams ability. That's kind of what I see for him, which is a valuable player in today's NFL.
100%. And I would stipulate today's Jerron Curse, not the rookie,
not the one,
not
before,
the rookie
yes.
Jerron Curse, because I had very high hopes for Jerron Curse. He came in, and again, progression, not linear. Came in, took a sort of a sag, and again has this sort of ascended under Dan Quinn. That Jerron Curse, yeah, I can see that for sure. Very valuable player in today's NFL. Again, maybe not a name something we pride ourselves here on at Bootleg is bringing you names maybe that are just under the sort of fold that you might not know about, you're going to know about him, whether it's his combine performance, his draft stock, or where he is in 2 years. AJ's going to make a difference.
That was 10, well, technically 12 players that stood out. We could have done another 12 very easily. The Liberty kid, Demario Douglas. I really want to get to at some point this draft season. I know we will.
The Jackson State receiver, this edge and that edge, and we named a lot of people as sort of honorable mentions. There's just dripping talent here. We didn't even get to some of the big school guys. Moro Ojomo from Texas. DeJuan Jameson was our first interview.
Coburn's been even better than Ojomo has.
Just all over the board, there is talent here. We're just picking a few, trying to get you an update of, hey, we've seen this over the first 3 days. Plenty more content to come. All of these interviews we've referenced coming out. Can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be one hell of a draft season, I can already tell, because if there's this much talent here, there's the same amount of talent over in Mobile, which we'll get to at some point. We have to watch the practice tape over there because we're not there. And then all the underclassmen, Lucas Van Ness, Jalen Carter, all the quarterbacks. We're going to have to talk about the quarterback. We're going to be going to pro days, watching Gonzalez up at Oregon.
We're going to have a few special guests.
There's this draft class is last year was nice. This year is awesome, and I really can't wait. We have a very, very jam-packed 3 months coming your way. Nice to start it here at the Shrine Bowl once again. One of my favorite events of the year. One of my favorite weeks of the year. Could not possibly thank Eric Galko more for giving us, I don't know, this entire environment.
Unlimited access, yeah.
It's been an amazing week. And all right, from here, we got a Super Bowl to talk about. So that'll be the next show that we got coming out, I don't know, sometime in the next 4 or 5 days. We have a whole bunch of research to do on the Chiefs and the Eagles. But for the other 32 or 30 fan bases, more draft content as well coming your way. So thank you for sticking with us. We'll be back in a few days with something. And until then, later.
Take care.